There's now going to be some questions from the floor.
This is more for Chris, as you've been on the council for a fair amount of time. You started off with a lot of talk with what are we going to do for our youth and all that sort of stuff. And in my time here, I haven't really seen the council pushing towards that too much. You've updated some club rooms and things like that. That's okay. That should be an ongoing thing as those things age. But what about the youth coming up now? What about the kids out that are riding through the forest on unregistered bikes and things like that? The other issue is, go back to housing, is where I've been involved for over 4 years. And it's been an absolute shit fight.
Dead right.
Because of the incompetency of people in council. And it comes back to a close source of the council has told me that when you guys okay a building application, you don't even know what you're voting on.
So, Graham, the question is?
The question is, what are you going to do about those things in the future? You talked about the futures thing for Talbot. What about the futures things for Bowen Vale and Timor?
Two points. First of all, you asked about youth. We've got some good youth programs. This is one of the ones that came up earlier about what council funds and what other governments fund. The state government actually funds youth programs, and we've actually got a very good youth officer and some good youth programs. One of the big things that we did over the last 4-year terms, and I think it's been very, very successful in terms of leadership, is actually establish a youth council. We're not the only ones who have done it. We've got some funding to do that. And that's been great because it's given some very talented young people an opportunity to have a say about the issues that are important to them. And they included things like climate, they included things like transport, public transport and connectivity, LGBTQ issues, to a range of issues, but they worked on their issues, and it's about their leadership and growing them in leadership. So I think that's a really significant thing. We do a lot of work, the youth officers do a lot of work on youth programs, holiday programs and things like that to try and provide resources for kids. Housing issue, look, the issue of Denyears Road, Bowen Vale has been a real problem. Graham, you've been in the middle of it. We've gone, that has been a difficult issue of, in terms of the representation on it. And I know it's caused you a lot of heartache. I mean, one of the issues is, for other people, it relates to titles that were given in the past, and the issue of the meeting current standards and current building standards and so on. Now, one of the things, particularly in Bowen Vale, is that it is an area where you've got the urban and rural interface issues. So one of the things I want to do in Bowen Vale going forward is actually have some consultation with the community. We've talked about this in council, to actually look at what housing standards should be, what the planning requirements should be, because at the moment they're a bit of that interface between urban and rural, and that creates some problems. So yes, there are some issues there. I'm very mindful of Bowen Vale, mindful of all the parts of the ward, but we do need to do some work. I think Bowen Vale for urban, for residential living close to a city centre, Maryborough actually offers a lot of opportunity.
One of the parameters we've got today is not to ask specific questions of one councillor. It's a question today. Questions today are to be addressed to all of the councillors. Now, I'm sure these two gentlemen here, when I say councillors, I should say candidates, they're not able to answer those sort of questions. So the questions today have to be non-specific. If you've got a query with the particular issues you've spoken about today, which I know about as well, that's not today. Today's not the day to address them. I'm sorry. Okay. So I don't expect you guys to answer that. So yes, Rob.
I'd like to ask a question of the candidates, except for the one who's already called out. It's like a horse race. If it's a Melbourne Cup, you need stayers. So we've had one go at the barrier, bad luck. We've got 3 left. Who's going to stay for 4 years? Who's going to stay, more importantly, for the following 4 years? This area needs stability. Who's in and who's out?
I'm in. I wasn't intending to run for council until, as I referred to in my response to the first question. But I'm in. I'm here to stay. I live in Talbot. My office is in Ballarat, Beaufort, Daylesford, Castlemaine, Melbourne. I'm not going anywhere. Same.
We live in Denali. At our current rate of progress, I reckon there's at least 4 years renovating this house, right? And at that stage, I don't think I'll be ready to go anywhere else. So to answer your question, I'm good for 1, maybe 2 terms if I got elected, yeah.
Well, look, I think I've proven my longevity today. I certainly commit to the next term. I commit to stability in the future. I don't know how long and for how long. I mean, it's difficult to see past elections, but my commitment is to continue to provide the stability. And as I said before, in answer to Roger's question, providing expertise, providing the known way and providing delivery capability is really important. So that stability is important. I'll provide that going for the period going forward.
Greg, you had a question. Is there going to be something that these 3 here can answer?
Well, it would be.
Yep.
It will be no. Hold on. Got the word. Got it.
Ben touched on about the windfall tax. I've asked these 3 people, because it's one of the things I was asked about. The plan for Talbot's $30 million for the sewerage. If you took that over the amount of houses and everything that's there, it's going to add up to what our figure, my figures were just very roughly, around about $35,000, $40,000 a house. But the big issue is the blocks. Once you've got sewerage on, they go past, if those blocks might be only worth $35,000, $40,000, once the sewerage goes past, if you've got to add on the cost of the sewerage, all of a sudden, those blocks will be up around 100,000, even if they're not quite now. And if people own them, they've got to pay the windfall tax. Can you guys, do you think that's true or false with the costings?
Greg, I just don't know. I'm not sure how with the sewerage component, how that goes to an improved value. I don't know. Sorry, just don't know. Not a satisfactory answer, but there you go.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I can give you some advice on that. It already applies in Talbot. The average block is 80,000, 100,000, 120,000. Those over 100,000 are already being taxed by the state government, the state revenue office. So it's happening now. The windfall tax, that's what we're talking about, Ben.
My caveat was,
talking about?
if you let me finish, Roger, my caveat was the mechanics of the sewerage coming in. That's all.
It's all related.
I'm not going to say something I don't know about, Roger.
Okay.
The only thing I can add to that, Ben, I'll take your knowledge of the windfall tax with your legal thing, but the key thing is how do we fund it? And Greg, you're right, it's a big cost and it's gone up. What I'm looking for, the federal government issued out recently one round of what they called enabling infrastructure grants, which were for up to 45 million to councils without a co-contribution for enabling infrastructure. We weren't ready to go with that grant. I put up a notice of motion to which council endorsed to the federal government to continue those for the into the future, because one of those would actually enable the capital cost of that to be done. We have a business case that actually justifies the investment of that amount, so it's just getting the capital. So that somehow adds to it all. But I think that's just important because it is a big amount, without a doubt.
I think in these issues, like if you think about whether it's motorways, transmission lines or whatever, there's a conflict between the personal individual's benefit or interests and tax situation and the common good. Now, that's the role of a transparent, fair, just system to measure that up. But if we want to go to heaven, we do have to die. So if someone wants to expand Talbot and tries to do it without putting in infrastructure, and then tries to get people to live there without the infrastructure. So I think we need to wake up and smell the coffee here, guys. If the place is to grow, just have a look at what is happening in Melbourne. Like, if it's going to grow, it's not going to be the same. So if we wanted to stay the same, why don't we just stay the same? But if people were looking for growth, we have to face up to the consequences of that, right? And this is the difficulty. Do we want to go to heaven?
No.
No.
We've had 2 floods. 2022 we had a really big flood, and then back in 2011 we've had a mini cyclone. I know Carisbrook and Denali, they get flooded and everything, but what happens to the people that aren't in towns? Like, are you happy to come and check out and help and to the farmers and people that don't actually live in the towns?
I think, as I said at the start, my emphasis is on the farmers, the rural areas. The towns are surrounded by farms. The farms are critical, and so my emphasis is on the areas around the towns, because they are around the towns. A bushfire or flood comes through the country to the towns. So it's not I certainly don't propose to focus on towns and not look at country. They're interwoven totally.
Chris?
Yeah, look, I think it's an important area. Again, one of the things that the government did fund in flood-affected councils was a flood recovery officer, which we have, whose task is actually to work with communities, to work with residents, to work with farmers, to work with people about what their issues have been, their needs are, to connect them with sources of funding, sources of support to do that. So it is recognised it is an important issue, and it is something that we're actually doing at the moment, and will continue, and is continuing in other councils.
I'm happy to go anywhere in the countryside where I'm invited. It's quite, and I'm not a great fan of German Shepherds and Alsatians, so I drove the other day out towards Dunluce or Dunluey, whatever you call it, and I saw lots of houses, long driveways, and I'm thinking, will I go up that driveway or not? So to answer your question is an invitation to go somewhere where I knew someone, I'll definitely respond. And the only thing that cheered me up in Dunluce the other day when I was wandering around looking at the sheep was I found a Killarney Road. And I thought, I'm not the first Irishman to be wasting his time out here.
I live in Flynn, and we also have a business interest in Maryborough. And I'd like to ask about the wind turbines. And unfortunately, the current member for Flynn is not here today, because I would like also to hear from her as well as the other people on the panel. We've been asked whether we would like to put wind turbines on some of our property, being farmers, and with that there's also an issue of noise, public liability, as in insurance because of neighbouring properties, because the CFA won't attend fires where there's wind turbine. So you've got public liability where the owners have to take out their own insurance, and that depends on how much they insure for. And also, if neighbours take up this of the wind turbines, we've got the problem that you've got neighbours against neighbours and devaluation of properties. So there's a conflict, could be a conflict of interest depending on who's elected in certain areas.
I think the thing I've learned coming up to the countryside is that there's lots of people drinking cappuccinos in Melbourne discussing global warming and different things, but they're not being asked to see a pylon in front of their window or a windmill in front of their window. Now, I'm an engineer. In the end, we need windmills and we need it all, right? So I'm not going to get into that. But the thing that has to be, it has to be a fair process. So someone has to justify why is that particular wind farm going in that area, and why should things be put in areas where the bulk of people don't want those things. So I think it really gets down to the process of that it's a fair, equitable process and everybody is consulted in the process. I think tokenism and some of these very superficial public consultations need to stop. Right? You need to talk to the real people, and unfortunately it has to go somewhere. I'll just give you one example. In Flynn, there's a dump station for cleaning your caravan stuff, and it's across the road from 4 houses. But if it had been on the other side of the caravan park, it would have been in an industrial zone. So I'm still scratching my head. What is it doing on that end of the caravan park when it should be on the other end of the caravan park? So it's all local. If it's outside your front door, a bus stop is annoying. Let's be honest, if you had a bus stop outside the door, it's great if you want the bus. But do you really want 5 guys smoking cigarettes waiting for the bus, right? So what I'm really saying is we have to manage that process. So I'm not saying I can stop the windmills. I'm just saying is that you should be talked to fairly, equitably, have your say, and the people making the decision should be able to explain why they're making the decision. That's basically where I'm coming from. So I'm not saying I'm going to stop the windmills in Flynn because I don't even know where they are.
It's a zero-sum game, and I don't mean to be seeking to be a demagogue, but I see it literally as country v city. If most of the power is for the cities, is it childish of me or naive of me to suggest that the turbine should be in Port Phillip Bay? Because about 30% of the power will diminish through the transfer from here to city, or the Melton distributor. CFA also can't go under the lines. It's not just the turbines, but if there's a smoke haze is conductive with electricity, so it's a matter of watch and burn. You rightfully raised the point, and many points, about why these turbines are terrible, and as Russell says, a bus stop in front of the house is good for some and not good for the person in front. And as Jeremy was alluding to before, a bit of Jeremy Bentham, I believe, a bit of utilitarianism, where the greater good is where politics goes, but there's always some who lose out. And politics is about who loses out. And that's where I think effective community voices to vocalise we're not happy, a campaign has to be made out. A campaign so that city people suddenly realise that country people are quite important to their lives. The difference with the city is they're in their homes, offices, flats, just talking to each other. We make things, and we face weather events, and we face nature, and we're a different sort of, not a different sort of person, but we face different challenges. At the moment, the way the system is designed through AEMO, it's my personal view that country people are treated like the thing that sticks to our heel when we're walking the dog. So we must also unify with various groups along the transmission route. Instead of infighting, be unified in order to be cohesive. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I think there in local government, 3 contentious areas, the wind farms, and the second one, broiler farms, which is another issue, and thank goodness a third one which doesn't impact us as much as it does some of our neighbours, and that is the overhead transmission lines. And each of those problems, and the reality is with each 3 that it's very much, and Kelvin, you alluded to this earlier, it's state government legislation that impacts it now, both in terms of the wind farms, as indeed broiler farms up to a certain level. The decisions have been taken away from councils to enable those sort of developments to proceed more quickly and get them done, because they were being held up by local councils, who were of course take into account resident concerns and so on. So we actually don't have a lot of say on some of those issues at all. So
you can sort of explain what your vision is for the future. The other one was the Maryborough itself is landlocked. It's not on the way to anywhere. We need a decent road from here to Melbourne. The Pyrenees Highway now has a great length of 50 k's an hour, and that just, I tell you, I'm going to Melbourne quite often at the moment, and it is just a nightmare. It's what's your vision for the future?
One of the things that we're working on, both ourselves, part of our tourism planning, and to give some acknowledgement of Alex Stoneman and the work that he's doing, but also part of the World Heritage Listing proposal, is looking at big places, big and small, and looking at micro journeys from major centres to go to the small places and tell their stories. So very simply, that connecting those smaller places to the bigger places is very much part of the equation. Parking in Maryborough was your second point. Look, the reality is, and most people I think have got it now, the state government, as it typically does when it's developing hospitals, takes over the planning, acts as the planning authority, which the Minister is able to do under the Planning Act. That's what happened here. We really have not been part of it. We were told at one stage, we had a session with us, but we haven't been part of that, and that's quite typical. That's the way they do it. But we've certainly expressed and been active in representing about parking, and took that action in relation to Neil Street and disability parking, disability parking. You mentioned about Bowen Vale. I agree. I mentioned it earlier. I agree absolutely. And my response in Mark Norfolk's questionnaire that he sent to all of us, you'll actually see that I've talked about Bowen Vale as an area where I think we need to consult with the community. It is clearly an urban-rural interface area, and I think for rural living close to Maryborough, it offers real opportunity, and we need to do more work, and that's already on the agenda to do that. The road issue, the state government largely, that's very much a state government issue.
The reason I'm standing, by the way, is not because I like to stand, it's so that people at the back can see me and I can see them. So my vision is to encourage sustainable business to come here and to look after the farmers, to have kids playing sport. It's pretty simple. I don't think people can look to government to make them happy or to fulfil their personal needs. That's up to individuals. I think it's a job for government to stay out of that area, but enable people to make their own choices. And for that, we need businesses here for people to work. Yeah. We need sporting facilities over the whole district. I was a bit particular to Talbot, of course, but that was after going to Bowen Vale's new oval. Joke. Not really, but mine. The other ovals have had a lot of money spent on them, which is why I was focusing on Talbot. And so for council to stick to their lane and not promise to fix things they can't fix, but also not to stop people fixing their own problems, and to stay out of private areas of life. In respect to the Maryborough district being surrounded by forest, I guess you're raising something that is inevitable in the future with higher numbers. It's either go up or out. And I'd suggest listening to the people who are going to be affected. There's always, in politics, there are promises for something great in the future. This is going to be fantastic. I think it's not quite my style. I'd rather listen to people whose current interests are going to be affected, perhaps adversely, and then weigh up, rather than look at future possible benefits and ignore genuine current concerns. And so that balancing process for me is for current residents' interests rather than apparent ones that may be in the future. So that's my philosophy of dealing with any new ideas, I suppose. Thank you.
Look, I'm back to my point about the AFL or trying to get into the Premier Division. The key thing we've got to do is we've got to raise the tide so all the boats lift. Now, one of the most successful cities in the world is New York, and it doesn't always have an easy time. But it's a famous city, and a friend of mine explained the way it works. It's got Wall Street, which everyone's heard of, and it's also got Broadway, which everyone's heard of. And they intersect down at a corner. There's a bull there, but it's because of charity and philanthropy. So essentially, if we want the Shire to improve, we have to cultivate the arts, the creative, the innovators, the engineers. Everyone with a half-brained idea needs to be encouraged to see, can we come up with something? Right? Denali is the gold and the grain. The gold is nearly all gone, or so I'm told, or else they're not telling me. And then the grain is there, but there's not. We need new industry or enterprise in Denali. We need things in Dialaba. So what my core vision is better cohesion, and we mentally think like a football team, which is the Shire needs to win against its competitors and stop fighting itself. And I'd love to bring in some of the keyboard warriors I've dealt with. I've invited to meet them, and they still haven't turned up unless they're here today. So essentially, I'd like better communication, and let's start talking about the issues, addressing the issues. And I'll give you the 3-line Northern Peace process very quickly. Parity of esteem, so everyone gets a look in. Meaningful dialogue, genuine discussions instead of tokenism, which a lot of people seem to get. It's the old talk to the hand. I don't know if you've ever happened to talk to the hand. You know, we're not here for you, but we're here for them, right? And the third one then is a shared future. But the thing that energizes everything is the shared future. So why should I stay? I've lived in multiple countries, multiple jurisdictions. Why should I stay in Central Goldfields? That's my question, right? Why should I stay here? And the answer is because it's a lovely place to live, but it's got endless potential, and we're sitting on it. As far as I can see, we're sitting on it. So that's my vision, to unleash the potential that already exists.
I'm interested to know, we have Flynn and Paddy's Rangers representatives or candidates and an incumbent. I'd like to know if they know their boundaries, the wards, if they could briefly explain to me just where their wards run. Who lives in their ward and just where they are, if they could articulate that to me.
Warwick, Daisy Hill, Alma, Moonlight, Lily Kerr, Talbot, down at Junak Forest, that's Paddy's Rangers. South of Bowen Vale, heading to Maryborough. Does that pass the test?
Did a pretty good job.
I think I speak for everyone.
You do. Can I just add to that? There's, with the recent changes to Paddy's Rangers goes round the other side of Maryborough, so round Ross Street and so on. That's a bit of a change. It's about balancing numbers. So I got a shock when I saw that there, but it was. I think it's just about a numbers game. So it's changed, but you covered essentially.
I missed my favourite town or area of the whole country, Bung Bong. I love that.
Okay, let's see if I can pass the test. Well, I live in Denali, right? I'm about 100 metres from the Loddon sign, so I'm just inside the thing. So there's obviously Denali, right? And then if you obviously go up the road, there's Goldsborough, there's Bialaba, there's Emu, then there's Archdale Junction. There's actually Goldsborough Junction. Then if you go up, there's Beckbed, Bromley, Havelock, Simpson, Timor West, and it's not Timor. I was saying Timor, and I was corrected every time. So Timor West, and then there's Dunluce, and then Natty Yallock is out there somewhere as well, and Eddington. Sorry, forgive me. There's one side of the road
and anything that's in the thing. I don't know who drew the lines, they're a bit crazy. And I think, back to my point about local government, it'll be hard for me to hide down in Denali Village or Bealabat because I buy my coffee in the local coffee shop.
You were looking to the future.
There are many more places in Flynn than Paddy's Ranges, clearly.
I want to thank Michael and his business for instigating this. I think it was really great event, and the sort of events we need in Maryborough.
Let's look into the camera, big smile.
Big smile.
Be easy. Ben, can I get you that?
Those songs out of the way. Yeah. Let's.
Yep, that is all good. And can I get you guys to come closer together?
Maybe I'd be better off in the middle. Just keep the two of you apart.
We're all friends.
Right, less talking. I think you guys have done enough for everything.
Okay. Oh my God.